Hey everyone, CJ Lang here for the FantasyAuthority.com. I am here to give you your Week 4 flex options. Let's go. First up for our Week 4 flex options is quarterbacks, and our number one quarterback is Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. This week they bring in Jacksonville, and Burrow has 3 straight weeks of 20-plus fantasy points. The Jaguars have given up a combined 7 touchdowns as a quarterback over the last 2 weeks. They also gave up the 5th most passing touchdowns and the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Burrow has 2 straight games of over 300 yards passing, and he's averaging a ridiculous 47 attempts per game. You can safely start Joe Burrow. Next, number 2, quarterback Baker Mayfield of the Cleveland Browns. This week they travel to Big D to take on the Cowboys. So far this year, Baker Mayfield has a 5-2 touchdown to interception ratio, which is much better than his first 3 games of last season when he had a 3-for-5 touchdown to interception ratio. Dallas gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks and has allowed the 6th most passing yards. Baker should also get a ton of volume in this game, as this could be a shootout, as Vegas currently has this over-under at 55.5 points. Definitely put Baker in this week. Some other quarterbacks: Ryan Fitzpatrick versus Seattle, Derek Carr versus Buffalo, and Kyler Murray at Carolina. For our first running back this week to flex in, we're looking at James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This week, the Jaguars travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. The undrafted free agent is the RB6 after 3 weeks. The Bengals give up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs, the 2nd most rushing yards in the league, and the 2nd most plays of over 20-plus yards. J-Rob is averaging 19-plus fantasy points per game, and after this game, we may need to consider him an RB1 every week. Write his name in Sharpie in your lineups. He is a safe play this week. Our number 2 running back to flex is James White of the New England Patriots. This week, the Patriots travel to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the Chiefs. It's going to be a tough game for them. We all know that James White experienced a tragedy 2 weeks ago with his dad in a fatal car accident. He's rejoined the team, and he should slide right back into that position on the depth chart behind Sony Michel as the RB2, and will be in all passing down scenarios. Like I said, this is a tough game. They're going to be playing from behind more than likely, so they will be passing a lot with quick screens and those long handoffs, and James White could eat up that Chiefs linebacking core. If you are in a PPR league, which, come on, more than likely it is, you need to crank them up. Some other decent flex options at running back for Week 3 are David Johnson versus Minnesota, Chris Carson at Miami, and Mike Davis versus Arizona. Our Week 4 flex options at wide receiver will start with Hunter Renfrow of the Las Vegas Raiders. This week, the Raiders host the Buffalo Bills. Do you remember during the NFL draft this year when the Raiders drafted 2 SEC stud wide receivers in Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards? Well, guess what? They're both hurt. Last week, Renfrow had 6 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown versus the Patriots. He has 32 total targets over his last 5 games, and the Bills' secondary has given up the 4th most passing yards this season. Derek Carr is also off to a great start, as he has 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. With a lack of depth at wide receiver, this is a great week to start Renfrow. Our second flex wide receiver option this week is Marquez Valdes-Scantling of the Green Bay Packers. This week, the Packers host the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Allen Lazard was a monster last week, but he is now out for the year after having core muscle surgery. MVS should pick up that production that he leaves behind. MVS is tied with Lazard and Devontae Adams for the most targets on the team with 20, and MVS leads the Packers currently with red zone targets. The Falcons' defense has been... They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers and the 3rd most receiving yards. MVS will take grasp of that wide receiver 2 role this week for sure. Some other decent flex options at Week 4 is Jarvis Landry at Dallas, Traquan Smith at Detroit, and T. Higgins versus Jacksonville. Our week 4 flex options for tight ends. Number 1 will be Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. This week, the Packers host the Atlanta Falcons. Aaron Rodgers seems to have Tonyan's trust. He has been playing 60% of the snaps and has 8 targets over the past 2 games, hauling in 7 of those for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. The 6'5", 237-pound, 30-year player goes up against the porous Atlanta defense, who gives up the second most fantasy points to tight ends and who ranked dead last in the NFL in passing yards and total yards against. With Lazard out and Adams getting the primary coverage, expect Tonyan to get more looks just like with MVS. Our number 2 flex start this week for tight end is TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. This week the Lions host the Saints. So far, Hawk is the overall tight end 9. He's also only one of 4 tight ends who has 4 receptions and 50 yards in every game this year. The Saints give up the most fantasy points to tight ends and have given up the second most receiving touchdowns. Hawk also leads the Lions in receiving yards and is tied with wide receiver Marvin Jones for the most targets on the team. With Golladay back and getting a lot of attention, Hawk should be able to roam free in Detroit. Get him in your lineup. Some other flex options that we think have good matchups this weekend are Drew Sample versus Jacksonville, Dalton Schultz versus Cleveland, and Logan Thomas versus Baltimore. Those are our flex options for this week. Remember to check out thefantasyauthority.com for all your dynasty, redraft, and DFS needs. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. We've got great content, great creators, and videos out all the time. Good luck this week. Catch you later.